Hello everyone. Today I wanted to make another video featuring Noir City Magazine, the physical copy. This is actually the first physical copy that they published. There's 30 others that are available on their site, and that you can purchase digitally. This is the magazine is only available, however, on Amazon. These were $15. This one, I did a video on issue 32. This is 31, and I went through it really quick. I got it yesterday afternoon. Read it while I in bed last night, and I finished it this morning when I got up. The feature article is Get Carter. Directed by Mike Hodges, who gets a modern noir master. I think he's the fourth one that Noir City has bestowed that honor on. Of course, one of Michael Caine's signature roles in a landmark neo-noir kind of film. I love this, the back cover. I'd love to have that as a poster. So there's in the magazine we get a really good interview with Hodges, who is still working. I think he's like 88 years old. He's still working to prepare another film. And then we have an article by Farron Smith Namey, and this is on Virginia Gray. And Virginia Gray is one of those Hollywood actresses that never quite made it to stardom. And lots of people wondered why. Even Louis B. Mayer told her once, "Why did you become a star?" And but she was in a lot of movies, a lot of film noirs, and this is a really good article. And I had forgotten that she was in my favorite Douglas Sirk film, All That Heaven Allows. She plays the friend who gives Jane Wyman some very sage advice, and that is Jane Wyman reading Henry David Thoreau. And then we get a feature on Andre de Toth. Not one of my favorite, I guess he was mostly a B-movie director. He made some very violent films. I did like Day of the Outlaw, but he made film noirs and westerns. Day of the Outlaw was recently on the Criterion Channel with Robert Ryan, a really terrific Robert Ryan film. But this is a really good article. And then we get The Art of Eve Plum, and that's Eve Plum down in the corner. And that's one of her artwork. She's currently doing artwork based on film noir movies or situations. I don't think they're specific movies, but if you don't know who Eve Plum was, she played Jan Brady on the Brady Bunch, and has been this film noir aspect of her painting career is relatively new. Then we get an article by Imogen Sarah Smith, and of course one of my favorites, and she has a very in-depth discussion of the films of Christian Petzold, the German filmmaker, relating how his films might not always seem to be neo-noirs, but they're loaded with aspects of the genre. I've only seen Transit and Barbara. Transit definitely has some very much film noir elements to it, but as always, with Smith, you get a very good, you get a very in-depth analysis that's very readable. Undine, I think, is his latest film released in the U.S. I'm not sure whether that's out on Blu-ray or not. And then we get a feature. I really enjoyed this. The feature on amnesia, how amnesia plays into a great deal of film noir. You see Guy Pearce from Memento, Naomi Watts from Mulholland Drive, but there's, I think that's Gregory Peck from, what is that, Masquerade. This was a really enjoyable article. I highly recommend this one. And then we get this is one of the most interesting articles in the magazine. This is a feature on Monsieur Verdoux. Is it film noir or isn't it film noir? And I'd forgotten the relationship between Chaplin and Orson Welles, because Orson Welles gets a credit from an idea from Orson Welles. Orson Welles said later, I wrote a whole screenplay. Chaplin is incorrect that this was just an idea that he gave him. Chaplin took the credit for the screenplay. There's Monsieur Verdoux was a giant critical and financial success, or failure rather, and they tried to sell it as Chaplin Changes Can You. Monsieur Verdoux is one of the most incredibly odd films you'll ever see, and much of its oddness comes from Chaplin's putting the little tramp aside and playing a dramatic role, but there's comic elements to it. It's really one of the strangest films, and if you've ever read James Agee's book or his collection, he was a big time defender of Monsieur Verdoux, and it makes me want to go back and see the film again. I believe it's in the Criterion Collection. I do not have it. Then we get some Blu-ray reviews, some book reviews as well. So overall, another fantastic issue, at least in my view. So now I just wanted to talk about some film books. There's only 4 here, make brief comments on them. I've really gotten back into reading about film. Reading about film sometimes is more fun for me than watching the films themselves. And this was reviewed in issue 32 of Noir City, and I hadn't come across that before. The 12 Lives of Alfred Hitchcock, which recently, which is a fairly recent release in my library. I actually had it on the new bookshelf. I haven't read it yet, and I just read the opening, so just to see whether it's actually readable, how readable it's going to be. But everything's been said about Alfred Hitchcock, you would imagine. I mean, he's the most written about film director of all time. I haven't read anywhere near everything, but I've read a lot about Hitchcock. But what this author, Edward White, does is he breaks it up into 12 aspects, so it's not like a linear, I don't believe it's linear themes. He goes by themes: the boy won't grow up, the murderer, the auteur, the womanizer, the fat man, the dandy, the family man, the voyeur, the entertainer, the pioneer, the Londoner, and the last chapter is the man of God. So I don't know, Hitchcock, I've seen all of Hitchcock's movies. He is my favorite all-time film director, and I love the Universal 4K UHD movies that were released, I guess, earlier this year or last year. But, I'm sure this is going to get me to, buy some more Hitchcock films. And a book that I did complete is How Did Lubitsch Do It? And this is a book by Joseph McBride, and that's Trouble in Paradise in the cover, Herbert Marshall, and who is that? Kate Francis and Miriam Hopkins. Trouble in Paradise, according to Joseph McBride, is his masterpiece. And he goes on and on about it. I think one of the faults of the movie is that McBride overstates his case right along. But there's lots of Lubitsch movies playing currently on the Criterion Channel. I particularly wanted to see Heaven Can Wait, which was from, I think, around 43 with Don Amici and Gene Tierney in beautiful living color, Technicolor. And Gene Tierney in Technicolor is worth seeing no matter how good the movie is. And also I wanted to see Clooney Brown, a really strange movie that starred Jennifer Jones playing a plumber, and I enjoyed both of them. I had seen them before, but not for quite some time. My own personal opinion is The Shop Around the Corner to be or not to be are Lubitsch's masterpieces. And Samson Raphaelson, who was a frequent screenwriter for Lubitsch films, wrote both Trouble in Paradise, Shop Around the Corner. He didn't understand why Trouble in Paradise was so loved, because he thought the characters were unreal, they were puppet-like. He much preferred, as do I, The Shop Around the Corner. Raphaelson is also there's some comments from Raphaelson, I guess it's from the 1970s or 80s, when all these old Hollywood films suddenly became very popular and they were being studied. And Raphaelson was a theater. He wrote screenplays and or he wrote plays, and that was his main work. That's what he thought. That was what he thought was the important work he was doing. Films were for fun and for monetary purposes. But he in the 1970s, whenever this interview was, he looks back and says, "None of my plays are going to be produced. I'm going to be remembered forever for these Lubitsch movies that he did write some other movies, but you know, this is the important work I did." He thought it was incredulous. Lubitsch, however, believed that that film was an essential art form, and you know, the most vital new art form of the 20th century. And these other two books that I have are kind of they're kind of scholarly books, but so far they're very good. I'm reading them in conjunction with some recent films that I purchased and I'm going to watch. And one of these is on Luchino Visconti, and that's him with Claudia Cardinale, I believe, from The Leopard. Explorations of Beauty and Decay. And I've read up to the point of The Damned, which is a recent Criterion release. And I've never seen this. And this is part of Visconti's German trilogy, which includes Ludwig and Death in Venice. Visconti was very much interested in, very much enamored of Thomas Mann and German culture in general. So I'm looking forward to this, and the book is pretty good. In fact, it's got 60 pages of notes, and I love notes, and they're good notes. And sometimes the notes are more interesting than the text itself, and a terrific bibliography. And then I'm also just starting the Cinema of Francesco Rossi, and this is by a Princeton professor. Her name is Gaetano Moroni. Very scholarly, but again, readable. And I have 4 films of Rossi on Blu-ray. I've done a video on Three Brothers, which is really good. This is Rossi later in his career. I've not done a video on Christ Stopped at Eboli, which is, to me, an absolute masterpiece. But I did pick up from Kino Lucky Luciano, and is this the one with Alex Cox? No, it's not. But this is, I think, from '73, maybe. I'm going to watch it now. And then Illustrious Corpses with Lino Ventura, and this does have an Alex Cox commentary, which they're always fun. Okay, that'll about wrap this video up. Thanks as always for everybody who managed to listen to me this far. You guys take care.